All right. So we haven't gotten an update to the roadmap in quite some time. We've got the Squadron 42 roadmap into 2020, but we haven't seen an update to the roadmap for Star Citizen. What does that mean? Now, we've always known that Squadron 42 was going to be finished before Star Citizen was going to be finished, right? We know that. That is a known thing. And a lot of people might look at that and say, okay, well, then can we take the Squadron 42 roadmap and pull that into Star Citizen and say, okay, this kind of gives us a picture of what the next couple of years in Star Citizen look like? And yeah, we can, because when you're out there and you're playing in the universe and you're interacting with things, you're doing whatever, a lot of the things that you get to test, a lot of the things that you get to play around with, they're kind of a test bed for the things that are actually being built into Squadron 42 right now. You'll often hear devs refer to say, oh, this is something that's dependent on Squadron 42. Indeed, the entirety of 3.0 was something that was holding up the development of 3.2, of Squadron 42. We knew that 3.0 was the precursor to, Squadron 42 being able to exist. It kind of gives the foundation of that large world that you see them traveling through in the preview and in that, 1 hour of gameplay that we got out of Squadron 42, that whole gameplay scenario that we got to see play out, not in our actual hands, but we got to watch it. So we can kind of look at all the mechanics that are on the Squadron 42 roadmap and we can say, okay, here's where this is coming in, here's where that's coming in, because a lot of that is going to drop into Star Citizen and we're going to be testing it and we're going to be playing with it. It's kind of a smart, fun way to kind of introduce us to different mechanics while still keeping Squadron 42 isolated and the story isolated from us. One of the things that we know that tells us that this is important is that we know that the Idris, for instance, will not arrive in Star Citizen until after Squadron 42 is released. It is intended that the Idris, the first time we really see it, that we travel through it, that we check it out on the interior and see what's up with it, the first time that we're supposed to really get a taste of that is in Squadron 42. That's supposed to be its big reveal. That's kind of, that's a big deal to Chris Roberts. That's the way he wants it, and we know that that's the order that things are going to happen in. So it kind of makes sense that Star Citizen is a test bed for a lot of these little mechanics and a lot of these little things that they want to try out and make sure that they work, while still not giving away the story, say giving us an alpha or a beta of Squadron 42 to mess around with, where, spoilers end up getting revealed. So even though the Star Citizen roadmap hasn't really been updated for a while, I think that you can kind of look at the Squadron 42 roadmap and start to infer on basic game mechanics and say, okay, this is probably stuff that's all going to end up, getting dropped into a Star Citizen. Most of it, once again, it would be a spoiler-free way to introduce us to mechanics without giving away story. And at the same time, there's probably some ship choices that have yet to be made. And so maybe that's why the roadmap for Star Citizen hasn't really been updated. They're probably looking at it and they're saying, okay, here's Squadron 42. We're trying to get it done by this date. Here are all the ships that we need. Okay, boom, boom, boom. We've got all this scheduled. Now what else can we fit in here? And they're probably trying to negotiate around that. So chances are we are going to see an update. I would expect that we'll probably see it within the next 2 to 3 months. And that's going to give us a much clearer picture of Star Citizen over the next year. Now, to change tracks back to ships. Unsurprisingly, some people occasionally disagree with me on certain ships, and this one is no exception. Now, the idea behind this is that I'm kind of revealing my bias and saying that I really like the Mercury Star runner. And, I'm saying, apparently I'm falling in love with the looks of the ship, and I'm not really looking at the stats of the ship. the ship, because it's got a speed of 215, 1050, which is 215 regular speed, 1050 afterburner. Not really all that fast, barely faster than a Freelancer, slower than a Cutlass, and yet, less heavily armed than a Cutlass. Less weapon, whatever. Less armed than a Cutlass. How can you like the ship? How can you think that it's a good ship? And to that, I say that the intention with this ship is in the right place. I was a proponent of the Cutlass even when the Cutlass was under fire. That's on record. There's video evidence of me defending the Cutlass, saying that, is it the ship that was promised? No, but it is a good ship. And I still believe that in regards to the Mercury Star Runner. I didn't buy the ship for the looks. I bought it because the intention behind it, what it's designed to do, is very, very good. Now, on the issue of the ship being less heavily armed, or less armed than the Cutlass, I think that's the best way to put it. I agree. Absolutely. You are 100% correct. 100% correct. But then again, it is the Star Runner, not the Star Fighter, right? It is a ship that is meant to evade capture. It is a ship that is meant to smuggle things, not engage in direct combat. So the armaments question, I don't really think that is so big a deal. If you're using it correctly, it probably isn't something that should, really affect you all that much, unless you're taking unreasonably stupid risks. Now, as to the question of its speed, that is indeed a concern, and that is a realistic concern. That's not something to just be brushed aside. However, there are systems in the game that we haven't gotten to play with yet. And you'll hear me talking about components, subcomponents, different grades, things that we haven't seen yet. And it's entirely possible that within the frame of a larger vessel that has a similar speed, there may be more room to upgrade this ship than the standard Cutlass. You have to remember that the Cutlass comes in as a very cheap ship, right? It's supposed to be very cheap and cheerful. That's why the Cutlass is less than half the price of the Star Runner. But within that price, beyond, a lot of people look at the price of a ship and they say, oh, the price relates to its length and its armament. There's a lot of determining factors that we don't get to see right now. And you can't really say a ship costs this much because it's this long, or a ship costs this much because it's this armed. There's certain dimensions to ships that we aren't really seeing at this time. There's certain factors that we don't get to see. And I think that the upgradability of a ship that is more developed, a ship that is more refined, is probably going to be such that this is going to indeed be a desirable ship in the Star Citizen universe. I think that you're probably going to see a lot more, I want to use the term range of motion in terms of how far you can upgrade a ship like this over something like a Cutlass. I see the ship somewhat as the natural next step in the progression of the Cutlass, especially for those who are more aimed towards the cargo running, the illicit cargoes, things like that, and not so much for the players who are more combat oriented. I feel that this is kind of a branching off point where the more combat oriented players might go to something like a heavy fighter, whereas the more cargo and smuggling oriented players will branch away from the Cutlass into something like this, the Mercury Star Runner. So yeah, my opinion of the Star Runner is very positive. I think that it is a ship that is pointed in the right direction. And rest assured that as the systems flesh out, if I do see a gap with the Star Runner, I may make 1, 2, or 50 videos in regards to this, demanding that it be addressed. So, suffice it to say, I'm a big believer in the potential of the Mercury Star Runner, and those are the reasons why. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoy it. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.